Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Brian E. Roach and Zach Metkler.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Brian E. Roach, the host who, as you know, abstains from toast. Maybe I'll just call it that. I abstain from toast. I don't really like toast. I still don't like toast. And I know nobody cares, but I do. Anyway, this is, I guess you would call this our draft summary or part of our draft summary internally here. And we're going to look at what the Steelers did on day 3. But before we get going, to help me talk about this, we call him our younger brother from another mother, the professor of football, the genius extraordinaire, and purveyor of O-line porn. Zach Metkler is with us. Zach, how you doing, man?
I'm doing the best I can right now with all of the people just festering on Twitter. I'm trying to stay low. I'm trying to just, not give myself, an aneurysm. Trying to think about all these people just on social media, venting all of their grievances with everything that's happened over the last 3 days. So I'm just trying to lay low and, live and let live.
Hey, man, it's interesting because we've been talking about this. We know, social media is, of course, a cesspool. I mean, it just is. It is. It's where everybody goes to get their the worst side of them out into the world for some reason. And the thing that's been popping up is, in all the hateful, the Steelers stink. Their draft was horrible. They got worse. Everybody's terrible. Fire Colbert. Fire Tomlin. Fire everybody. Sell the team to a new set of owners. Whatever. The thing is, most of the negativity has been answered by positivity in the commentary, at least in a lot of the cases that I've seen, where, you may have a couple people just going on and making return comments, but the vast majority of the incoming comments from various people do seem to be positive. And from that angle, as Zach Adonia said in the back rooms, he's proud of the Steelers fans because they're trying to stay positive about this. And I think that in some cases that's true. I mean, the negativity is definitely out there, but I think I've seen less of it in general than I normally do. Do you think that's true, or are you just getting all the trolls and so it's just all negative down on your Twitter world?
I mean, I get a lot of the trolls, but that's nothing new. But I do see a lot of the positivity that Zach talks about, because I think there's a lot of people that are out there trying to share the fact that you can't just say it's all bad all the time, because it's really not. Like, there's a lot of positivities you can make from this if you choose to be, curmudgeon the entire time and just looking at all the negatives that you think you see. You're not gonna. What's the point in even watching and enjoying the team that you're supposed to be such a big fan of? I'm not saying you have to love every single thing they do. You don't have to love every pick, but, have some positivity to see what these guys can do. And I do agree that there are a lot of people out there that are fighting back against the trolls, which is nice. You don't always see that. There's sometimes just people that like to go and, bring everyone down around them on social media. And I think the fact that there is a nice positive outreach from some of the guys and gals from Steelers Nation are doing a good job. I think it just goes to show you how divisive the draft can be, because of the fact that there isn't a lot of consensus on the Steelers draft. And I think that's largely in part due to the fact that we didn't have exposure to a lot of these guys because we didn't have a pre-draft process that we're so used to having. We always had these connections with these guys, meeting with the Steelers and kind of having an idea where they're going to go. And we had nothing this year. No one saw a lot of these picks coming other than just speculation. So, I think Alex Highsmith was the only pick that they made where there was a pretty clear report that there was interest in him. The other players that they drafted, there really was no connecting the dots anywhere. I think Kevin Dotson months ago, that was basically it too. So I think that kind of creates some of this divisiveness. But the fact that we have fans that are willing to fight back and, put in the good work, I'm all for it. I'm happy about that.
Absolutely. So, I got to stop saying that. Joe gives me grief for saying absolutely, but I love that word. But I got to stop saying it because I need to get rid of that tag. I don't want to be the host who says absolutely the most. I like my host who doesn't like toast. All right, let's jump into it with the Steelers. But before we do, I want to address a couple commentaries that we got on the last pod. First of all, thank you everybody for commenting, whether you commented positively or negatively. But Zach, one of the guys called you out and essentially mocked you for saying Claypool would start behind Switzer. So I want to give you the opportunity to explain, because I understood what you were saying, but reemphasize what your point was there.
Yeah, my thing is I'm not obviously looking at the fact that he's going to be over on the roster over Claypool. I'm looking at the fact that every single year the Steelers draft the receiver, he always starts at the bottom of the depth chart. I know this might be a unique situation because of the fact that we have a guy who was drafted 49th overall, which, as we mentioned in the last podcast, was the earliest a receiver's been taken since 2006, and they took Antonio Holmes in the first round. But he's going to start out on the bottom of that group of the varsity roster, as it were. You know, where you have Juju, you have James Washington, Deontay Johnson, Ryan Switzer, who all have ample NFL experience, and it's probably going to start in the same tier as Deon Cain. Is he going to stay there? No, not unless he just comes out of the gate and just sucks, which I don't envision happening. But he's going to start there because of the fact that he does have some raw aspects of his game. And that might be the first couple of days of training camp. It might be the first week. It might take until the first preseason game, depending on how this all looks, you know, with the new world we're living in with COVID-19. He's going to start out instantly at that point. He's not going to lend there. And I agree with the comment that Ryan Switzer's not even given to make the roster. The reason I was saying he even has a chance to is because Ben's back, and, you know, he seems to be, you know, in Ben's good graces as a receiver. And, you know, the Steelers do listen to that stuff. But when you look at a talent perspective, he is the least likely to do there. But, you know, there's going to come down to a time where do we envision Claypool fitting? Is he going to start out in the slot, which is where Switzer predominantly plays? We're going to get him some outside reps where he had a lot of vertical routes and concepts like that at Notre Dame. We don't know. But my main point was not the fact that Ryan Switzer is better than him, because right now Ryan Switzer, without even seeing a snap of Claypool, I can tell you right now, is not better than Claypool. Just from a physical perspective, a physical gift, catch radius, speed, all that, however you want to look at it, he's better. He's a better receiver. But right out of the gate, right out of the bat, none of these dudes are going to be just thrown into the starting lineup. Devin Bush, the 10th overall pick last year, wasn't just thrown instantly into the lineup. It took him a couple days to get into that. They never do that, and that's not going to happen. That's all I was saying. Claypool probably will be the fourth receiver starting the year. That's just, I'm going to put you out there for that. He's not going to end up being the starting guy. That's no indictment to his talent. The Steelers have three receivers at the top of the depth chart that have quality NFL experience that they're going to put there. And one of those guys has a massive rapport with Ben. That's Juju. And Deontay Johnson and James Washington were getting to that point before Ben got hurt. So they're going to have three guys that have that rapport built up at least a little bit that Claypool's going to have to learn to develop. And that's going to be the biggest thing keeping off the field is how quickly can he get on the same page with Ben, because that's how these guys get dictated with their playing time. Ryan Switzer has that rapport as well, but he's obviously not as gifted athletically or talent-wise as the other guys on the roster, in my opinion. That's all I was saying. I'm not saying that Ryan Switzer's a better receiver than Chase Claypool. I'm not saying he's going to make the roster over Chase Claypool. I'm not saying any of that stuff. Right out of the gate, he's going to be below him on the depth chart, just like all these rookies are with their positional counterparts. That's it. You know, there's nothing to overlook there. I, right now, don't see Ryan Switzer making the roster. That's just my opinion. But we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, no, I've been saying that for a little while. As I'm tired of the Ryan Switzer show. Not that I don't think Ryan Switzer is a wonderful human being, but I'm tired of seeing him run around, 50 yards to gain 2. And so, I would agree with that too. I thought that was the point you were making. This is B Mentlow. If I'm gonna bring out your comment, I'll give you the shout out. And the second one, Captain Spartan 04, noted that I was insane in saying that the Steelers' red zone offense wasn't as good the year before. Because they were close to leading the league. What I meant to be pointing out is it felt like as the year progressed and as they got towards the end of the year, it started to slip, and that their problems in the red zone sort of began at the end of that season. Not that they weren't really good during the season as a whole. But, it just felt to me, and maybe I'm misremembering, and I will be honest, I didn't go back and really double check. It's just that was what's clawing at my head, is that by the end of that season, the red zone efficiency started to slip a little bit. And then, last year, what are you going to say? It is what it is when you got, the backup quarterbacks that they had playing missing Smith-Schuster a bunch, and basically just not having their full complement of guys. And that was Captain Spartan. I do want to call out one other guy, Ronan. I can't say Gagin, I don't know. Ronan, he just put together a fairly nice comment about the draft, and I think it goes along with what we agree with. There are positives in this that you can take away, and while KJ is dead to me now, or JK is dead to me now, I should say. See, I'm not even going to say his name right anymore. I don't care. And while I would have loved him to be in the black and gold, I don't dislike the Chase Claypool pick, and as I said yesterday. All right, so let's jump into day 3 stuff. And, for those of us who assumed a running back was going to be drafted at some point, we were proven to be correct because 3rd round, they took Anthony McFarland from, Maryland. And there's a lot of reasons why I think this could have happened, or did happen. First of all, Matt Canada is very familiar with Anthony McFarland. I'm sure he was a voice in the room saying, hey, this is a guy I can use, I can do interesting things with. There weren't a lot of other guys left, really, that were very interesting. Was I a little surprised by this pick? I was a little surprised by this pick, not because it was a running back. I expected a running back to be taken in the draft, but when they didn't take one, in 2 and 3, and they waited till the 4th round to do it, I was a little more surprised. I kind of thought maybe running back was not going to be an option at that point. So that did surprise me a little bit. And I'm gonna now throw it to you and let you do what you do and then analyze this and tell me why it's good, why it may be bad, and then I'll give you what my feelings are on it. But Anthony McFarland, professor of football, go.
I don't think it was a bad pick. The thing that got me, I was surprised by it too, because we've gotten so accustomed to the Steelers having a very cookie cutter niche type of running back they go after, and quite frankly, after they passed on those guys in the first or with their first pick at 49, the guys that kind of fit their profile weren't really on the board. There was a couple guys that I liked later on, but you start drafting guys in the 6th and 7th round of running back, they're not going to be anything. I do like McFarland's game. I think guys like him oftentimes suffer from being in a very anemic offense. Maryland, is not really known for being a football powerhouse in the Big Ten, so I'm not really surprised. But when you watch the tape, you see a guy, he's short, he's spunky, he's willing to get upfield, he's athletic. I think he's a better, more potent version of what you have with Kareth White. I think the Steelers also making a comment that, they don't really have anybody with his skill set on the roster. It kind of speaks volumes, I think, where they kind of consider White at this point, too, who's still on the roster, so that they kind of got to upgrade there. And, it makes you wonder from this point on, I think he'll get some time. He's going to contribute on special teams. I wouldn't be surprised to see him compete for a return man job early on. And again, just like I said before, he's probably going to start behind – he will start behind Connor and Snell. And it's going to depend on how he can adjust with how he competes with Samuels for that 3rd running back spot. He'll make the roster. All 4 of them should make the roster. It's going to be guys like Edmund and White that get pushed off, but he provides a nice athletic profile the Steelers really don't have there. He's not going to be a pounded down your throat type of guy like Snell and Connor are, which presents the question, when depending on how this year goes for Connor leaves, do they switch to more of a committee approach with Snell, him, and maybe Samuels, that we haven't really seen under Tomlin. He always likes to have that cowbell, and McFarland, I don't think is a cowbell. I don't think he's going to be a guy that carries the load. He's a change of pace, niche, depending on what you're going with. But I think he fits various schemes. I'm not going to put him between the tackles as often, but you get him on the edge and you get blocking outside on like an outside zone or a wide power. You have a chance to get him some yards, or even a counter, where you're getting those guys kicked out on the edge. He can hit up there in a hurry. He's going to accelerate to the next level, and he is willing to hit you. He breaks tackles well. If you try to grab him around the ankles or around the legs, he high steps through a lot of these would-be tackles, which is nice to see from a guy who's 5'8", 208, or 205, whatever it is. So I like him a lot. I think he's a home run hitter anytime he can touch the ball. And he's going to make moves in the open field once he gets to that second level. The biggest issue with him that I saw on tape was just his pass protecting is nothing to be desired. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's 5'8". Not a lot of those springy, lightweight, fast running backs want nothing to do with pass protection. So that's going to be a big dictation of how much time he can see as a pro. Because if you can't pass protect, you're not going out for routes every time as a running back, even if you're athletic like that. So if you can't pass protect, you're going to be a 2-down back in the league. You have to learn how to pass protect. And I think that's going to be the biggest dictation of whether or not he actually becomes a more featured back for this team that can get a lot of touches throughout a game, or if he's just going to be a guy that, is very niche in his role. I like the profile. I don't dislike the pick. I was surprised by it. I wouldn't give it an A grade, but he was my best running back available on the board, and I do think the Steelers, if they can get creative with him in some capacity, I think they can have something on their hands there. So, I gave it like a B minus because I was just surprised by it, but I don't think it's a bad pick. I think he gives a really interesting profile of that backfield.
Yeah, I think what my initial negativity is because I still feel the 298-yard game against the Buckeyes. Even though the Buckeyes managed to win that game, he was ticking me off.
Exactly.
So that was back in 2018. And on the flip side, I'll let that go because it is what it is. And that wasn't his only 200-yard plus game. But I will say, he had two really huge games in 2018. That was Indiana and Ohio State. But the rest of his rushing games, you're talking about 69, couple games over 100, 34, 74. Nothing really explosive. But how much of that, is, like you said, Maryland not being very good, and or him not being as good as maybe you would want him to be. And he did battle, according to him, a high ankle sprain that he got in the second game last season or third game last season against Temple, and that may have impacted him the rest of the way. He only had a couple 100-yard games last season. So this is not, a running back who has the big stats, right? Everybody's focusing on the Ohio State game because that's the big stat he has. He certainly has home run potential. Do I love this pick? I'm not sure I love this pick, but I will be honest and tell you I can't remember who else they could have taken at that spot at that time. And I know that he wasn't on our radar, and in the back rooms, nobody was talking about, Anthony McFarland might get picked here. We all had different takes, but I don't remember. I've been asleep. I went to bed, and now I've forgotten. Who else was available? But as I look at the pick, and because I agree with you, I don't think he can be a bell cow. I don't think he's the guy that's going to carry the load. But if they can utilize him effectively as a change of pace guy, he does provide that speed aspect that they don't really have in either of the other running backs that you expect to make the roster, which is Connor and Snell.
Even Samuels.
And even Samuels. You expect Jalen Samuels to make the roster, but Joe has been making the case as an H-back, kind of a hybrid tight end, which may be a better fit for him. I don't expect, I just don't expect that he will be a guy in the backfield a ton, right? And hopefully he won't be if at least everybody else stays healthy. So with McFarland, he's a guy that has that different aspect to his game that I don't think is present. So I see that, and if they're willing to switch, like you said, this is going against the grain for them. But if they're willing to go and be atypical of what the Steelers normally do under Tomlin and have a running back by committee kind of approach, maybe this kid can contribute a little bit. And while I'm not 100% sold here, right? And I often find myself in that position with their fourth round picks. I'm not always sold on them, and I have to kind of get proven wrong, and I hope I am. And again, I'm not against the pick. I'm just not as positive as I could be. I'm willing to say I think I see the positive aspects of this pick, and I hope it works out. I probably would have been a B minus, just like you, maybe a C plus. I've seen guys giving it an F, and I think that's stupid. But so there's that. And then, because I do see the downside in the stats, I just don't see him being consistently showing up as a performer. But he clearly has that potential in him. It's whether the Steelers can find it and utilize it. And I'm guessing with Matt Canada there, that's maybe a big reason why they think they can. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's also why I look at him compared to like a guy like Cam Akers. That's why Cam Akers was a second-round caliber player, because he could make something out of nothing with a bad offense. A guy like Anthony McFarland could not carry that weight on his own. Even Levon Peak, his backfield mate, couldn't do that, because that's why neither one of them went early. That's why they're here in the 4th and 5th round, because they're not guys who are going to make a lot out of nothing. They need to have the blocking up front, and that's just more of an indictment to their size than anything. So.
Yeah, and as we said, Cam Akers is going to have to keep doing that now because he's on the Rams. So he has no offensive line. Okay, the next pick, though, there you go. This one excited us, didn't it? And again, I wasn't sure. I mean, I didn't think this was where they were going to go. I didn't realize that the like of this player had been quite so good, and I reiterated. Man, words are hard. I reiterated my thanks to you for giving me some, making me look smart about him on Twitter yesterday. But Kevin Dotson, as you said, and all these are quotes I got directly from Zach, so I'm stealing them again, but I'm giving him credit for stealing them. A very intelligent guy as a lineman, huge upper body. And I retweeted a tweet of his where he's throwing up 475 and making it look easy, and on the bench, and I was like,
that was a couple years. That was a couple years ago. That wasn't even like that was a recent tweet. That was like 2018.
Yeah,
those numbers have gone up more than likely since then.
Absolutely. So he's a strong guy, as you said. Torso looks like a combination of a Mack truck and a barrel-chested bodybuilder, and that is obviously the case when you see him just heaving, that kind of weight up. Powerful at the point of attack. Experienced in various schemes. Hands are very heavy on contact. This is a pick I actually think I might love. Because while I think he certainly has a potential for growth. I don't think his game is perfect, but this is the kind of typical Steelers see him. Tomlin sees a guy who's just a massive dude, falls in love with him, and now they can find a way to groom him into the kind of guy that they need him to be. And this is a guy that, if Wisniewski plays this year as the starting guard, maybe can mold into that, other side for DeCastro, and now you've got a strong core up the middle. I don't think he can bounce outside and be a tackle. You can tell me whether you think that's the case, but I'm pretty excited for what they can do with him. And as happened with Deontay Johnson last year, the rumor mill spreads that Sean Surratt was getting calls saying, dude, that's a steal. That's a good pick right there. You're going to be happy with that. And I like when that kind of stuff comes out. I like what I've seen from the physicality of this kid. You want to talk about a guy who abuses people. Admittedly, you're not talking about the ultimate highest level of competition, but then again, he's still making these guys on the opposite side of the line look foolish to a certain extent. And, just the quotes that are coming out afterwards, right? Quotes like, the one, what was the one? Tells the other guys on the defense the plays just because it makes him laugh that they can't do anything about it, and he watches them. And then, apparently he played like a pissed off bouncer. I like it. I love that. That's great, man. So I 6'4", 310 pounds. This is a big dude, and I'm excited for the potential that he brings. So I really think this is a solid pick this late in the draft, deep into the 4th round. I'm pretty happy with that pick, and now I'll let you pontificate on the O-line pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. This is my favorite pick of the draft, and that's not just my O-line showing. I think the only reason that a guy like Kevin Dotson is still there at this point is because he was considered to be one of the few biggest combine snubs. For some reason, I have no idea why he was not invited to the combine. And I think had he been there and had he been able to get more of these interviews with teams one-on-one in person at that time, I think you're looking at a 2nd or 3rd round draft pick. I think you're looking at one of the guys who's with the top guards off the board. I know I didn't have him as high on my big board, and the reason why I didn't have him I like him a lot. I loved watching him. He's a fun guy to watch. I didn't have him as high on my big board because of the fact that I don't think he's a year one starter anywhere he goes. But I think he's a guy that you let sit for a year because he has some lower body flaws that could, against quicker guys on defense could get some headaches. But from a technical standpoint, I mean, you're looking at a guard prospect who is going to have a very nice foundational building block from a technique perspective to get going here. And I think that's going to make Surratt's life a lot easier coaching him. That's going to make him a sponge when it comes to learning from guys like Matt Filer, Marquise Pouncey, and David DeCastro. I love the pick. He brings the mentality that I want in an offensive lineman. Jeff Schwartz, who, was in the league for a while and always has comments to make about offensive linemen, came out and made the comment that he would not surprise him whatsoever when it's all said and done if Dotson ends up being the best card in this draft class. And that's a draft class that has guys like Cushenberry and John Simpson and, whomever that are, potentially looking at starting as guards. So I love the pick. I was all vouching for a guy like John Simpson, but if I could pick another guard at this point in the draft, he was really the only offensive lineman on the board still that I was, fine with and happy with. And like I said, I don't think he's there if he gets an invite to the combine. I think he brings that grit you want. Personality-wise, I think Steelers fans are going to love him. I think they're already starting to fall in love with him just watching him with all the stuff that he's been saying in these interviews and, his intro video of him having all that Steelers gear because his family was already such Steelers fans growing up. I love it. I have concerns a little bit in pass pro that I think he's going to have to work on. I think that comes from a lot of that lower body flexibility because he does play stiff-legged. You kind of see him get by a lot of with what he does with just his pure strength. If you can add some technique, lower body to that, where you can get some flexible and some flexibility with knee bend and in hips and ankle flexibility, which he struggles with, you're looking at a guy that's going to be rooting out all pro defensive linemen that won't be able to match up with him physically just because of his strength. And he's going to be hopefully a starter by year 2. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if see him get time this year if he can adapt quickly enough. I like the pick a lot. I borderline love it. If I had to pick one guy from this class that I think is going to make the biggest long-term impact with the team, I think it would be Kevin Dotson, just because of the fact that he has the clearest route to being a starter on this team. And I also like the idea of going with guard. I know we had bounced back and forth the idea of going tackle instead of guard. I just think, you go guard because in the event that you end up not being able to trust a Corafor or Banner, you're going to have to bump Matt Filer back out there. Matt Filer's the only swing guy on the lineup right now that you feel confident at both spots. So if Corafor doesn't impress you, Banner doesn't impress you, you can start Wisniewski, which is good. Or, if Dotson ends up being a guy that you like a lot, he gets starting time, then you bump Filer back out the tackle where he was more than adequate last year. I thought he was one of the more consistent offensive linemen last year on the roster. So I think you have options by going with the guard. If you draft the tackle, now you're forcing the hand and kind of have to bump Filer inside or just go long-term with Wisniewski, which is fine. But I know that's not the Steelers what they envision with Wisniewski. They see him as the Finney replacement who's a veteran guy who's been in the last 2 Super Bowls and has won the last 2 Super Bowls. So, or 2 of the last 3. I'm sorry, not the last 2 of the last 3. So I think realistically, Dotson has the clearest track to start sooner rather than later. Hopefully that's this year. If not, I think it'll be by year 2 if he can adapt to the NFL. But I love the pick, love the personality, love the grit, love the strength, love the mentality. There's really nothing I don't like about Dotson other than just needing to see him improve a little bit of his lower body flexibility. With a lot of guys that are his strength, like I said, they get by with just being able to manhandle anyone they want to. So once he can adapt to that, you're looking at a guy that's going to be rooting people out left and right. I can't wait to see that. He's going to be a fun guy to watch in camp this year, I think.
All right. So the next pick, which took a while to get to, 6th round, I actually didn't know much about, but as you talk about attitude, you talk about grit. I like what I hear coming out of this kid's mouth. Eric Herman and Zach Adonia were both ranting and raving that we needed safety depth. And I don't disagree that we needed safety depth, but I just didn't know whether we were going to get it. And we certainly weren't going to, go high to get depth at safety. But they pick up safety depth here with Antoine Brooks Jr. from, surprise, surprise, Maryland. And again, one of his quotes it goes as follows: "I just want to play football to the best of my ability. I can play nickel. I played in the box a lot. I like being in the box because being aggressive is just my nature." I don't know. That sounds dirty to me, but I like it. I'm an aggressive tackler, an aggressive player. I just like to be in the play. This is a guy, I think, that there's more, jack of all trades kind of concept here. I think, they can do a lot with this player depending on how he adapts to the NFL, right? He's a guy that they could potentially make a hybrid linebacker. They could put him down, as a nickel. They can let him play safety. They can put him in a lot of different places. You're asking a lot when you get down to the 6th and 7th rounds of these guys to be more than backup, contributors or special teams guys. But again, here's a guy I just think with his flexibility, and how much they love position flexibility, that maybe can be a guy that can contribute. Maybe not this year, but again, down the road. We'll have to wait and see. I haven't watched tape on him. I don't know a ton about him, but I certainly like the attitude, and I understand the need to have some depth there. What's your take on Antoine Brooks Jr.?
Yeah, he was the one pick that I shot my shot with on day 3 who, I had a question about him, and it stung in my head, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking the fact that why have we not talked about this guy? The Maryland connection made too much sense. He kind of fits what they're looking for as a depth piece. They wanted a guy that could be a versatile defender who can play in the box and he can drop a little bit, deep center. I'm not going to do that consistently because he's not the most fluid athlete. But when he's in the box, he is a nice, versatile box defender who can play in the slot a little bit if you want him to underneath. And he's doing well with underneath zones and shallow zones and whatnot. I like the pick. I don't think he is going to be a massive contributor early on if he makes the roster. I think he will make the roster because, let's be real, the safety depth is not exactly competitive at this point. I think he'll have a very good shot because I think Marcus Allen – I think if Marcus Allen can develop better, we're not even looking at this pick as being a reliable source. I think it's the fact that Marcus Allen, didn't even make the original 53-man roster last year, after what's-his-face from the AAF ended up making the roster, Cam Kelly. After Cam Kelly had the preseason he did, Marcus Allen was an afterthought. So I think if Marcus Allen doesn't produce, you're looking at Antoine Brooks potentially being the guy that sneaks in there. I think he's a massive leader on the field. I think he has, again, just like Kevin Dotson, that's a very common theme. Alex Highsmith, Kevin Dotson, Antoine Brooks, they all have that alpha, big dog mentality, and I love that in football players. I love guys that are going to be willing to set the tone and be leaders on the field and be leaders off the field, and I think he gives you that. And I don't know how they're going to use him. If they're going to use him more of a box safety, he can be more of like an overhang defender that plays off the edge because he does have a high level of effectiveness blitzing, which, the Steelers love doing with guys like Mike Hilton. He constantly is playing at 120%, coming downhill. He's looking to hit guys. His tackle angles are good, which is huge for me because we see some of these defensive backs take terrible angles and then not finish the tackle. He does both of those, and he's willing to lay it below. He has to play with a lot more restraint at the next level, but he was a fun guy to watch on tape. He comes down with a nice fryer behind him, lays the hit. He's in the right position. He has great instincts. And he's built for it. That was a big concern with some other guys, like Brandon Jones, we'd mocked. There was a concern about how Brandon Jones would handle this. You're looking at a guy who's 5'11", 220 pounds, and his arms are, just boulders. He's a dude that is well built to come down there and be a thumper in the box. And he's a guy I'm hoping can make an impact. I think he could be a nice number 3 down the road. I think he's going to be, at a minimum, if he makes the roster, a special teams contributor, which would be a nice thing for him. He'll have a nice tone-setting presence there. And, I like him. I did some research after the fact. Apparently he played quarterback at one point in time, which helps him with his route recognition and understanding what's happening in front of him, which I love. So I liked this pick. I'm not going to say I love it because really there weren't a lot of picks that I loved and was, jumping up and down for. But I did like this pick for the value because I had him going earlier than this. I was surprised that he was still on the board at this point. And I just think it makes sense. The Steelers like to double dip at schools. They double dipped at Maryland this year, and the Maryland connection is evident. So I like it, and I guess we'll see what he can do. But I think he has some potential. If he can find a role with this defense there's enough traits to build off of there. You're looking at a guy who could be a solid contributor for you in a year or two.
All right, and that brings us to the 7th round, where they took Carlos Davis. And look, I'll be upfront and say that this is a pick I expect to be at best a practice squad guy. I don't expect him to even make the roster this season. I could be wrong, but again, when you're down this deep in the draft, and we're going to talk about who they signed as undrafted free agents as well. These are guys who are, really one step away from being just that, an undrafted free agent. It's 7th round. You take a shot, you see something that you like. What I'm wondering is, what did they like? Because this is, of the picks that we have, this is the one I'm having the hardest time getting the positive vibes out of, right? Trying to find what are the upsides to this kid. And you never know. And I will give them credit. Look, I'll let the defensive line coaches and the defensive guys and Tomlin and Colbert, I'll take their view over mine, 10 times out of 10, really. Because I think that they probably do know better. I have my own views and opinions, and sometimes every now and then, as they say, a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then. Every now and then I'm right, but I don't know. What is it you think that drew them to Carlos Davis, and what are his pluses and minuses from the standpoint of what he can contribute?
I mean, his biggest plus, and there's no way of looking at it, is just he is an athlete. He's not a fluid one, but he is an athlete. I mean, to be a 6'2", 313 pounds, run a 4.8 to 40, that's going to turn heads no matter what you do. And he was strong. He put up 27 reps on the bench. But he has a twin brother, Khalil Davis, who went in this draft as well. I was much higher on Khalil Davis than I was on Carlos Davis. I don't really know. I mean, I think the thing that jumps out that is the most desirable is he has great size, doesn't have great length. He has great athleticism, doesn't have great mobility. So for every one pro I try to look at, the direct counter pro, con is right there with it. It's a glaring weakness. Defensive linemen that don't have great length, but also don't have great lateral mobility, don't typically last in the league very long. I think he'll come in here and he'll compete with a guy like Dan McCullers. Chris Wormley has experience at nose tackle. I think a guy like Kevon Walker, they signed from the XFL, is a more exciting prospect just due to his ability as an interior gap-penetrating pass rusher. I don't know where Carlos Davis fits in. I think this is just a result of he was the top player remaining on their board, and they just pulled the trigger on a D tackle to give some competition there. Because he is a nose. I mean, he's going to be a 0 to 1, maybe a 2-eye interior shade on the guard. I won't be surprised, but he has the size. He has the strength. He does punch quickly, which is one thing that stands out on tape. But beyond that, he's slow off the ball a lot of the time. Doesn't have the length you kind of see from the position. And he doesn't really do well laterally. Javon Hargrave worked really well laterally off of blocks. He was able to sidestep guys, put a quick move on them. I don't see that from Davis. And I think you're looking at best a practice squad player. This would be the one pick, the only pick that I would be genuinely surprised if they made the roster. I think the other 5 guys have a solid shot at making the roster. This one doesn't move the needle for me. I think he'll be a body that's kind of there. For his sake, it'd be nice to see a guy like this step on the spotlight and make a move. I just don't see it. I don't see the pick. I'm surprised the Steelers went with this, with what they typically look for from their interior D linemen. So we'll see. The 4.82, you can't joke. He moved. He's fast for a guy his size, but I don't see it. And he's not going to offer you a single thing as far as I'm concerned as a pass rusher. I hope he does well. My expectations aren't that high for him.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's where I'm at. So that rounds out what they did in the draft. And, of course, a lot of times what you do after the draft can have an impact as well. And the Steelers did sign really kind of an interesting group of undrafted rookie free agents. And I'm just going to run through them real quick, and then we'll get your take on anybody who stands out to you as having some upside, and the guys who you think are just potential practice squad guys or whatnot. So they took fullback Spencer Nye from Auburn, guard Christian Montano from Tulane, a couple defensive backs, Trajan Bandy from Miami, and James Pierre from Florida Atlantic. Linebackers, they took 3, James Lockhart from Baylor, Leo Lewis from Mississippi State, John Houston from Southern Cal. 2 defensive ends, Josiah Coatney from Mississippi, Calvin Taylor from Kentucky, and then to give the punter a little competition, they signed a punter, Corliss Waitman from South Alabama, Mississippi State. I know nothing about any of these guys, and I'm going to immediately tell you the guy that I think has the best chance to make the roster is the punter. Not because I think he can, simply because if punters are hit or miss. If I can't even remember the name of our punter. What the heck? Jordan Berry. Thank you. I should remember. I like Jordan Berry. But Jordan Berry can have his moments where he's not, he doesn't hit the ball well. And if he has a bad camp, hey, this could open up a position for Corliss Waitman. We'll see. I don't think so. I think he's a guy they brought in just because they need to bring a punter in to compete. Got to have more than one guy kicking the ball, right? So that's the group of the undrafted rookie free agents they picked. Anybody in here excite you at all? Anybody stand out to you as a potential anything?
Yeah, the guy who on this list who's actually the highest on my big board was actually Trajan Bandy. He's a prototypical kind of slot corner. The 2 corners they got, kind of complement each other well. They had an outside corner in the form of James Pierre, who has some nice length. I don't think he's a draftable prospect, but he's a guy who I think you could potentially stash on your practice squad and see what he can do. He has nice athleticism, nice length. He's 6 foot, like 190, something like that. He has nice length, nice athleticism to work with. The footwork's there, but there's too many lapses in the technique. He wasn't. I think he should have gone back. I was surprised to see a guy like him come out as a junior. He's the type of guy that should have gone back another year to really kind of refine his technique. Didn't have a lot of experience. You can work on him, and I think the Steelers have guys like James Bradley and I'm drawing a blank on, or Tom Bradley. I'm drawing a blank on the other DB coach right now.
Yeah.
But, whatever. Point being, Austin, Carol Austin. I think realistically you have 2 guys that have the ability to kind of bring this out of a raw player like that. And I think him and Bandy, because Bandy is another guy that has that oomph. The ball skills lapse a little bit, but he has that oomph. He has the size of being kind of cut from a similar mold that Mike Hilton did. And I think he has a very similar approach. Those 2 guys, I wouldn't be surprised to see in the practice squad. I also think the linebackers they brought in this class are interesting too. Like Leo Lewis, I know Eric made the joke that he sounds like he'd be a traditional thumper, from the old school 1960s, NFL films. But I think really he actually has a nice athletic profile. He has some range, he has some length, he has some intelligence from the position. His biggest thing is just consistency as well. And that's a lot, a lot of these guys that go undrafted, unless there's some glaring injury issue, like there was with a guy like Thaddeus Moss. These guys are falling because they have holes in their games that you don't know if you can get anything out of it. I think with his athletic profile and with John Houston's profile too, because he's another interesting prospect, those guys, I think, actually have an inside route to make the roster because of the fact that beyond Devin Bush and Vince Williams, there's no guarantees. I think Ulysses Gilbert is a pretty solid bet to make the roster. That's 3 dudes at a position they normally keep 4 to 5 guys. Robert Spillane's the other linebacker on the roster. They didn't draft one, and they made a couple other moves here and there. But I think these 2 guys have a chance. If one of them steps up and proves that they can be something on special teams, they have a chance to push for a spot. I'm not saying they will, and they might make the practice squad, but they have a position. They're in a position where they have a very shallow group of guys that really have nothing to prove. Robert Spillane's not a proven guy. Ulysses Gilbert was nice last year. I think he's going to be the number 3 this year, but he still has something to prove. He's only going in his second year as a former 6th-round draft pick. So who knows what these guys can do. Beyond that, Corliss Waitman, I saw he was Athlon All-American, from their rating service. So, that was something to consider. And I don't think he was anything to write home about. I don't think he'll really push Barry, but he gives competition. They always bring in competition for Boswell and Barry, and I think this was the one that probably was more necessary to bring in competition for because they're always looking to upgrade that position. And the one that stands out above them all literally is Calvin Taylor. The guy's 6'9", 310 pounds. That sounds like he was built in a lab. That's unheard of size. He's a former offensive tackle. You almost have to wonder if they're going to try and move him back to the other side of the ball, kind of similar like they did to
Alejandro.
Yeah, so and built very similarly. A lot skinnier, and he added size to his frame when they moved him to the defensive line. And he had a nice career at Kentucky as a defensive lineman. So I'll be interested to see what he can do if they keep him on D line or they move him to the other side of the ball because of that size. This free agent class, Steelers always get criticized. They never really have undrafted free agent classes that are strong. The fact that there's a couple guys on here that I had on my board that I thought could move a little bit makes me happy. It's nice to see they actually have guys that fall that they had interest in. I don't know if any of these guys make the roster. Traditionally, you have like one that pushes for a spot, one or two that pushes for a spot. If I had to take a shot, like I said, it'd be one of those linebackers or one of the two corners. I don't think any of them do. But it's a decent group, I think, and a lot of these guys might not even be here. They move so many pieces around from the undrafted free agent pool. They'll make some moves here. They'll sign somebody else. They'll release a guy. But I think there's interesting pieces here to work with for a team that didn't really have a whole lot of need for these guys. Didn't have a lot of room for these guys either. There was Colbert came out and said they probably weren't going to sign as many guys. I was surprised they signed 10.
Yeah.
But I think it's a nice group. I think they added some guys that could be interesting in camp and should be fun to watch. I don't know if they make any impact. It's hard to tell at this stage in the game, but it's just because none of the premier guys really were on this list. But there's pieces there to work with, and they have the traits you look for at this point where they're undrafted, but at least there's something to work with athletically or above the shoulders. So I'm all right with it. I'm not going to criticize them for guys that didn't get drafted.
Yeah, well, how can you? You get what you get out of that group.
Yeah.
All right, that kind of wraps up the draft for us. To close out this version of the podcast, give me your overall. And I think draft grades are stupid, but people like them, so whatever. Give me your overall grade for the Steelers on this draft.
Here's my thing. People are criticizing this draft up and down and left and right, and I get it. The reason being, as far as I'm concerned, is they didn't have a first-round draft pick, so to get a well-known prospect that everyone had as a first-round grade was thrown out the window the second they traded for Minkah Fitzpatrick. You weren't going to get an elite top 10 player at 49. You weren't. And especially at a receiver class, Chase Claypool very well goes early in a class that's not as historically deep. I mean, at 49, 10 receivers were already off the board. You can't compete with that. You still got an elite athletic talent with a lot of upside as a receiver 2 or receiver 1. When you don't know prospects, when these guys, we get so enamored with one prospect. J.K. Dobbins was on the board. He's going to be an all-pro future Hall of Fame running back now because the Steelers didn't draft him. We have no idea what he's going to do. We have no idea what Claypool. What happens if Claypool comes in and puts on the type of rookie season that Juju Smith-Schuster had? Then what? Is it a bad pick still? What happens if he puts together a year 2 like Juju did? Is it a bad pick still? You don't know right now what these guys are going to do. We have no idea. J.K. Dobbins could be a bust in Baltimore, and Chase Claypool could end up being the receiver 1 for the next decade with the Steelers. You have no idea. We get so enamored with these dudes that we want to see taken, that when they don't take them, they take a player that we had nowhere on our radar. It blows us all out of whack. Then beyond that, you have these situations where the Steelers had a very cookie-cutter list of needs. As far as I'm concerned, any need you could have thought of, except for the people that thought they needed to draft a quarterback, and the group, myself included, that thought, and the group that thought they would draft a linebacker, they drafted an offensive lineman. They needed an offensive lineman. They drafted a receiver. They needed a receiver. They drafted a running back. They needed a running back. They drafted an edge rusher. They needed an edge rusher. They drafted one. They needed a defensive lineman. Like it or not, they still drafted them, and they needed a safety. They drafted a safety. What more could you ask for them with the limited capital they had? They drafted 6 guys at 6 positions they needed, and they got good value on a lot of them. The whole notion of you could have gotten him in the 7th round, you don't know that at all. And looking at a guy like Deontay Johnson last year, he was a 6th round pick. What are they doing drafting in the 3rd round? Then you hear later on there's rumors that the Cardinals were going to take him because Bruce Arians, MFing the Steelers for taking that pick because they wanted him at the end of the 3rd round. You have no idea where these guys are going to go. You see a guy, you pull the trigger, you take him, you love him, that's it. They hit the needs they needed. Whether you like the players or not is a different story. But as far as I'm concerned, from a need-based perspective, they hit the needs they needed to set out to get, and I thought they got good value for them. They got guys that may not massively contribute right now, but how do you think the Packers fans feel when they draft a quarterback and a running back who will be the number 3 and the number 3 at their respective positions with the top 2 picks, and a win-now franchise? I'll take this draft any day of the week over a draft like the Packers, which might be great in 2024, but in 2020 it doesn't move the needle very much. I think the Steelers hit for need. I thought they got interesting prospects that can come and contribute. They may never be an elite draft class, but right now they're in win-now mode. They added a 6'4" receiver. They added a very nice edge rusher in the second or the third. And they got a running back that kind of gives you a different profile. They got an offensive lineman who very well could be a long-term starter along that offensive line. Got nice safety depth, and who knows what they have in Carlos Davis. I give this like around a B. Honestly, the Carlos Davis pick pulls it back a little bit. I'm not going to put a lot of stock in a 7th-round pick, but I give it a B. They hit the needs they needed to. They got great athletic production from these guys. A lot of these guys bring the athletic demeanor and the mental demeanor you want. I mean, you got mental Olympics coming from guys like Antoine Brooks and Kevin Dotson. I love that stuff. I'm giving it a B. I like the direction they went. A lot of these guys were not on my radar, but I guarantee you, had we had a pre-draft process that we were used to having, a lot of these guys would have been in a lot more mock drafts for the Steelers, and it probably would have been a lot less of a slap in the face to fans that had no idea. Because most of these fans complaining, I'm going to attack me in the comments section all you want to. The people that are complaining the most had no idea who these guys were to begin with, and that's why they don't like the picks. We don't like things we don't know. If they knew about Kevin Dotson, or they knew about Anthony or Alex Highsmith or Anthony McFarland or even Chase Claypool, they wouldn't be complaining as much. They have no idea who these guys are. Roast me and attack me all you want to. I'm not changing my belief on that stuff. But you can't argue against a guy that you have no idea who he is just because you wanted J.K. Dobbins. I'm sorry. Get over it and move on. What's done is done. See how these guys can contribute and stop bashing and wasting your time with all this negative energy before these guys even put pads on. They're not even in Pittsburgh yet, and we already think they're going to all be busts. I digress. Go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry.
It's all good. I'm right there with you. I would have been a B+ until Carlos Davis, and that drags it down to a B for me. Overall, the bottom line is, yes, they have very limited capital. They answered all the needs that they needed to answer. I think that the guys that they got all have the potential to be contributors, minus getting down to Carlos Davis. But I mean, again, I don't know, and I don't want to be down on Carlos Davis. I want to.
No idea. He could come out.
He could. You don't know, but they fit. They fit what they needed to do. They got guys who are athletic. They got some guys with position versatility. They got guys who can be pieces to the puzzle, which when you think about it, that was the best they were going to get out of this draft, is guys who are pieces to the puzzle, because they, as you said, they got their premier guy last year, a year ahead of this draft, when they traded that pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick. And I wouldn't undo that trade. There was nobody that they were going to get at 18 that I would have wanted more than Minkah Fitzpatrick at this point. So I'm quite content with where that ended up. And when you add Minkah Fitzpatrick into the concept of what they got for this draft, I'm getting closer to an A again, because you got a guy who is an All-Pro. What else can you want? Look, I feel like part of this is I think the AFC North as a whole did a pretty good job in drafting this season. The Bengals had 7 picks, and I didn't go through their late picks, but I think they did what they needed to do with their top picks to try and give their franchise some life. They got a new quarterback. They got a new receiver to pair up with A.J. Green that could potentially down the road make their offense very dangerous again. They addressed some defensive needs to a certain extent. Do they still have holes? Yes. There's a reason that they were the number 1 pick in every round in this draft. The Browns, I give them kudos for picking, offensive line guys that they needed to pick, and I like the guy they took. The rest of the draft, I don't know. But I don't think it was bad. I thought the Ravens had a very good draft, and I hate them for it. And I hate that they have J.K. Dobbins. But again, you don't know. What if J.K. Dobbins, and I'm not going to wish this on him, even though he's dead to me now, blows out a knee and he's done? You never know. With any of these guys, there's so many things that you just don't know. And how much is J.K. Dobbins going to play first year with the group of running backs that they already have there? I just don't know. But, I think this is a group, and when you compare the Steelers draft to the rest of the AFC North, I can understand some people feeling a little disappointed in what they were able to achieve. But you have to take a step back and say, with the capital that they had, with what they had to work with, they did pretty well. And again, when you factor Minkah Fitzpatrick into the group as that's your number one draft pick, I'm really okay with where they ended up, and maybe more than okay. Again, there's not a lot of open positions on the Steelers team. And I know people are like, "Oh, you're talking about we were 8-8 the last 2 years, blah blah blah, didn't make playoffs, blah blah blah." Well, you let go of last year because you know what happened last year, and understand that getting your Hall of Fame quarterback back will make a difference. It's going to make a difference. And the people who are all trade Ben's washed up. Man, I want to bookmark every one of those comments so we can come back to him at the end of the year. He's going to be hurt after game one. He's going to be this. He's going to be that. How do you look, you can live your life that way and assume the negative. I'm going to look at the guy who passed for 5,000 yards the year before and say, hey, maybe that's the guy we get back, and maybe he doesn't even have to throw that much, to hit 5,000 yards. I'm hoping he doesn't. We've talked about it. I hope he's right around 4, and the Steelers are doing just fine. I don't know that you can gift the Ravens the division at this point. I don't know that. Do they look good? Sure. Do the Ravens always look good? Damn them, yes. They're very rarely terrible. But again, Lamar Jackson surprised everybody last year. Is he going to surprise everybody in year 3 or what have you? I don't know. I don't know that teams aren't going to find ways to defend him now and defend that group. And remember, as much as you don't like it, the Steelers defended him damn well last season. And this is going to be a defense that is going to improve this season again, in my view. So I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it that it's already a cakewalk. Go ahead and assuming we have games and assuming we have a season, go ahead and don't watch, man. If you've given up already, don't watch.
Yeah,
because I'm not there yet.
And the Ravens lost pieces, too. Let's be real here. They lost that offensive line is not going to be the same offensive line they had last year. And who's to say that the guys they have replacing guys like Marshall Yanda and whomever, who says they're going to be as great as they were before? And teams now have a full year of tape on that, dynamic, explosive offense. I'm not saying they're going to regress, but teams catch up. It's hard. Let me see the Ravens repeat this. Do I have confidence they'll repeat what they did? Sure. Lamar Jackson's a great quarterback. I'm not going to take it away from him. They're a great team, and John Harbaugh, as much as anyone in Pittsburgh hates to say it, is a good coach. I think the Ravens are going to be in the mix again, if not at the top of the mix. But the Steelers gave them a game last year in the first game. Second, the last week 17, we're not going to talk about because that whatever. But Lamar Jackson's worst regular season game was arguably against the Steelers, and this isn't a Ravens show. The Ravens are a fantastic team. They're a fantastically constructed organization. I thought they had the best draft in the division. But again, everything we're talking about right now is on paper. Everything's on paper right now. The Steelers draft has a lot of guys that people didn't hear about. The Ravens draft has a lot of guys that people did hear about. Patrick Queen, J.K. Dobbins, whomever. Let's see how this all plays out, people. I mean, we have no idea. Every draft right now can look good on paper. How many of the guys from all of these picks are going to actually end up having productive careers as pros? 10% of them? 20% of them max? Come on, give it some time, Give it some time, breathe, relax, see what happens.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's going to close it out for us. Again, for everybody listening, remember to like, subscribe, and do all your stuff. And for one of our commenters who's been consistently commenting, please be our YouTube friend. I don't understand what that means.
The bot or a pet or something like that.
I'm assuming it's just somebody who wants subscribers. But hey, I'm glad that you think we have great content, and I'm going to not assume that you're just being facetious. Anyway. yeah, like, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, keep the comments coming. We love having the commentary. And we've got a surprise for you early next week, so look for it. We're going to do one more draft show and get let's just put it this way, we're going to get a more professional's view of how the Steelers did with a special guest that we've got coming. I ain't letting the cat out of the bag yet. Just not doing it because Joe will be mad if I do. But look for that maybe late Monday, worst case early Tuesday morning, and we will have this stuff out for you. And until then, Zach, thank you again for joining me. It's always enjoyable to discuss. I'm sorry that Christmas is over for you. Now you have to start actually dealing with the potential season.
Yeah, it's all right. I'll start getting underway with the 2021 draft, and maybe that will help the void that's now left inside my heart and my soul. We'll see.
All right. That's going to do it for us on Steel City Underground Podcast. Again, my name is Brian E. Roach. His name is Zach Metkler. And until next time, remember, it's chaos out there, so be kind.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.